Hello and welcome to the bonus materials for Westeros.org's coverage of episode 1 of season 3, Valar Dohaeris. This week Elio will be handling the history and background material, and I'll be providing some of our highs and lows for this episode.
One of the things the show doesn't really often get into is sort of the deep background and history and the world building that informs the places, the peoples, the characters so very much. And you can see this most clearly of all in Astapor. On the TV show, you get there by sea from Karth. There are slaves, you buy them. The people there kind of don't believe in human rights and they have their own language, and that's really all you know. There's a lot more to it in the books. Astapor is one of the 3 major cities on Slaver's Bay, which is west of Karth, but it's east of the Valyrian Peninsula. And they are descendants of the old empire of Gis. Now, Gis, thousands of years ago, it fought a series of wars with the young Valyria. Very much modeled on the Punic Wars between Carthage and Rome. And just like the Punic Wars, it ended up with one side completely destroying the other side, sowing the fields with salt and so on. And in this case, it was Valyria that won. And the old empire was destroyed and sort of enslaved to Valyria. So the language you're speaking is actually Valyrian. It is a dialect of Valyrian that has drifted away from the high Valyrian of the ancient Valyrians, and is mixed, suffused with the sort of the guttural sounds of the Giscari native language, which no longer seems to be really spoken except by scholars, perhaps. Now, the other thing one needs to know about Astapor is there's a bit more to the Unsullied, at least in the books, than what they show in the TV show. In particular, it's not just discipline and training that makes that Unsullied not do anything when his nipple is cut off. In the novels, and I suspect this is a detail they're just not bothering to say, but in the novels, the Unsullied actually drink a potion called the Wine of Courage. And I guess you'd say must be some magical component, but basically it completely deadens their sense of pain. They do not feel pain at all after taking this long enough. It kills the nerve endings that deal with pain. So they are fearless in part because nothing hurts them. So that's the other factor about the Unsullied, but they are not just eunuchs, they're not just really disciplined, they're literally sort of almost inhuman, and that pain doesn't bother them. And that what makes them so very dangerous. One of the things about the Unsullied is that they really won their reputation and renown about 400 years ago, when the Dothraki exploded out of the Dothraki Sea and started ravishing the free cities and so on. And in Qohor, they bought 3,000 Unsullied. And there was a desperate fight. They had sellswords defending them, and they had these 3,000 Unsullied. And this great call with his massive Khalasar attacked. And the sellswords ran and fled, but the Unsullied, perfectly disciplined, held their shields together and fought them off. Charge after charge after charge. And Unsullied died, another stepped forward to fill his place in the wall of shields and spears. And at the end, the call, his son, his blood riders were dead. Tens of thousands of Dothraki had died. Just a few hundred of the Unsullied remained, but they were victorious. And the Dothraki were so impressed in some ways that it said that the surviving Dothraki warriors rode by and cut off all their braids, which they grow their braids to indicate their victory and never being defeated. And all the Dothraki and the Khalasar cut off their hair, their braids, and dropped them at the gates of Qohor. And since then, Qohor has always had a guard of Unsullied who have braided hair on their shields. So you can expect that if someone has a lot of these Unsullied, they might be very, very dangerous.
Alright, time for the highs and lows, and as everyone watching this would know, we were quite unhappy with the end of the last season, especially myself, so it was with some trepidation that we went into this season. But the first episode so far is looking quite good, and there were some definite highs. As before, both Elio and I were very happy with Peter Dinklage's Tyrion. His scene with Tywin in particular was a delight to watch. The Tyrion's desire for approval from his father and his father's disgust with him, that was straight from the books, as was much of the dialogue. We were also very happy with the final scene, where we have Daenerys in Astapor looking to buy herself some Unsullied. Hearing the High Valyrian from crassness and having Missandei translating what he said a bit more politely than he actually expressed it was great fun, and we're hoping this shows that Daenerys' storyline is going to be more in tune with the books this season. Now, there were some lows, of course. But there were some. We were quite underwhelmed with Marjorie's scene in the orphanage. We understand that they wanted to show that Marjorie has done something to be beloved of the people, but it doesn't really work like this in this kind of setting. In the books, Marjorie has simply been arriving with her family, who's been handing out all these alms for the poor and bringing in bread wagons and so on. And she's young and she's beautiful, and they're taking her through the streets and throwing flowers in front of her. It's a whole propaganda thing that is much more in tune with medieval sensibilities, instead of having her trampling through the mud and going to an orphanage and handing out toys personally. It doesn't feel right. It feels a bit cheap. We were also a bit underwhelmed with some of the new characters, in that they seem to have been toned down for the show. They're not quite as larger than life as they are in the books, and one example would be Mans Raider. His scene with Jon, it doesn't have the same feeling as in the books. There's something lacking there. The fact that he's not a singer, he's not this eager and sort of very vivid character who really loves life and loves being a wildling, and there's a sternness here that, yes, Mans can have that, but I think it is the contrast very much in the books that is so important, that he can go from one moment sitting there singing and playing a song and singing, and the next moment Jon knows that if he missteps, they're going to kill him. So I think they're lacking some of those nuances in their portrayal of man.
And that's it for our discussion of Valar Dohaeris. You can join us next week when we'll be discussing Dark Wings, Dark Words and giving our opinions on it. The episode is particularly interesting in that it will be bringing into focus some of the characters who were left out from this first episode. So, for example, we'll be seeing Arya again and what she's doing with Gendry and Hot Pie after they fled Harrenhal, and we'll be seeing the progress of Jaime and Brienne as they make their slow and inexorable way towards King's Landing. See you then.